Ms. Brough, as the longtime head of the Denver Metro Chamber of Commerce, you led what is essentially one of the most powerful conservative organizations in Colorado. In our first debate, you told us that you couldn't immediately think of any examples where the interests of business are different than the interests of citizens. So here are a few examples of where Denverites voted and disagreed with you. Oil and gas setbacks. You fought against them. Denverites overwhelmingly voted for them. Paid family leave. You opposed it. Denverites voted for it by a wide margin. The creation of a progressive income tax to fund schools. You fought it. Denverites overwhelmingly voted for the measure. The question, has your advocacy on behalf of business interests been out of step with the views of most people in Denver?
Not at all. Let's just take one of those issues, paid leave. This has been, my mom was a single mom. I've been a single mom. Paid leave for families is one of my highest priorities and one of the areas I focused on my entire life. I provided it to employees at the chamber. But this is also where, when you have a flawed policy, I think our citizens of Denver want a mayor who tells them the truth, that a policy doesn't work, that it's flawed. And even Governor Polis agreed that that was a flawed policy. The city of Denver today, and many Denvers and the city of Denver and many other cities agree that it's a flawed policy and have adopted their own to provide a better benefit to employees. So I think on all of these you have to dig in. But I understand there's times when the chamber's position would be different than Denver's, but the chamber's not running for mayor. I am.
How do we distinguish between the two?
I can answer every question about what my position is versus positions the chamber has taken. And I've done it throughout this campaign, and I'm happy to continue.
So fighting oil and gas setbacks, that was the chamber's position. Was that your position?
Yeah, my position on oil and gas has been very consistent, trying to set the highest standards and make our transition and hit our goals for 100% carbon reduction by 2040. Consistent.
So again, were you personally opposed to the measure that Denverites overwhelmingly voted for on oil and gas setbacks?
So let's focus on this particular measure. Denver has no production of oil and gas in its, so I don't care. We don't care about this setback issue in Denver.
I imagine people might care
relevant.
about the health and safety of people outside the city.
Yeah, of course.
So how about the issue of the progressive income tax to fund schools? Again, we're trying to distinguish between your personal position and the chamber's position. The chamber opposed the progressive income tax to fund schools. How did you personally feel about it?
Yeah, I don't oppose a progressive income tax, and I don't oppose funding schools. I support funding our schools, and I would support a progressive income tax. Again, for me, it'll be the details of the proposal that I would respond to.
And I asked you about some specifics. More generally speaking, to wrap this up, how often were you advocating for conservative policies through the Chamber of Commerce that you personally, privately disagreed with?
I think because, Kyle, the role I had was to represent an organization of 3,000 members and trying to reach consensus about really complex policy issues and the position they would take. Honestly, I separated, my personal view, even when I was trying to help drive toward that consensus or the approach we would take. And that was true whether we were taking more conservative, in your language, or more progressive positions, like supporting the LGBTQ community, or passing a tax increase to fund every Denver public school graduate to go to college. I would say on all of those, I was always trying to find a path forward to address a real challenge.
Thank you.
Ms. Brough, you've had concerns about increasing the minimum wage and the burden that it would put on businesses, in particular small businesses. You opposed Amendment 20, a statewide minimum wage increase that Denver voters had approved by a margin of 2-1. So should Denver's minimum wage workers be nervous that their mayor was opposing making more money?
No, not at all. The concern on that, I think, had to do with it was in the Constitution. I'm doing this from memory. And I think that is a problem that we have learned the hard way in Colorado, putting everything in our Constitution. And again, flawed policy is the challenge. I strongly support minimum wage. In addition, though, I strongly support work that we can do as a city to make it, people actually be able to afford to live here by focusing on housing and affordability of housing, which I think we can even make greater progress than just minimum wage.
So to be clear, you would not try to change the minimum wage in Denver or go back to city council or make any changes to the policies?
I support minimum wage.
Ms. Brough, former Democratic Senate President John Morris a supporter of your opponent here, wrote an op-ed in March saying that while you were at the Denver Metro Chamber of Commerce, the chamber never lobbied one way or the other on gun control legislation. The same gun control legislation that Mr. Johnson references when saying he took on the NRA and won. Now, as you run for mayor, your campaign includes a plan specifically for gun violence in schools. Why is this topic important to you now, but you didn't use the weight of the Chamber of Commerce to lead on it then?
Yeah, this topic has always been important to me my entire life. My girls lost their father because of access to a gun. And so for me, this is a critical issue. But again, the Chamber of Commerce has a process and 55 board members to decide its priorities and what it focuses on. And you don't control that. That is an entire process. Didn't change what my priorities have been my whole life.
Going back to Kyle's question, was this an example of the Chamber of Commerce having one position and you personally having a different position?
Well, in this case, I think the Chamber had no position. But yes, I had a strong personal position. I have my whole life.
From a position of leadership, did you have any power to say, I personally think we should take a position on this?
Yeah, of course. And I did. And I probably have shared that personal position throughout the chamber in conversation. But I don't have the power to direct the positions of the chamber, even when I was its CEO.
Thank you.